Welcome back, beautiful souls, to the Soul Collective podcast. I'm your host, Emily Ghosh Harris, and I am so excited to introduce today's guest, Padma Menon. We just have hit it off really since the moment we connected. I've felt a deep kinship, and we're going to be exploring today all about how to bring more pleasure, creativity, goddess consciousness into our everyday lives. And Padma is a transformative mentor, dancer, philosopher. She is the founder of Moving Archetypes, supporting people to unleash their unconditional freedom and embodied heartfelt wisdom. Thank you so much for being here today.
Emily, it's such an honor and pleasure to be here. And yes, it's just been a wonderful pleasure to have met you and the conversations we've had. There's been a real connection. I love listening to your podcast. I love the guests you have on them. And I'm really looking forward because I feel you have a great audience that listen to you and the kind of themes that you explore and the beautiful space that you hold. So I'm really delighted to be here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, I feel so honored to have this co-creation together. And I know this conversation is going to be of great benefit to listeners because really it's all about moving in a new way with life. And sometimes we can kind of get stuck in the stagnant or in the old. And so I love how you really are allowing us to and inviting us to dance with life in a new way. And so I'd love to know just a little bit about your journey and what inspired you to create Moving Archetypes.
Emily, when you speak about dance, life, and dance is life, dance is reality. And for me, I think that's been something that came to me very, very early on in my life. I was very young when I started dancing. It wasn't even a choice, it just sort of happened. My mother was very interested in dance. And so I was right in the middle of dance, and dance had taken over my life and my reality even before I realized it. So I was what they call, a child prodigy. In India, I was actually performing professionally since the age of 9. And I had a very special teacher, a guru, as we call it in India, a legend by the name of Guru Vempati Chinnasatyam. He was a 10th generation dancer in his family. So he came from a very traditional lineage. And something about the way in which he held dance in his body was very unique. When I was young, I didn't quite know what it was, but there was this very ancient connection that he held in his body. And it wasn't that he was a wonderful performer or teacher, but there was something else. There was a way in which when he danced, it really stopped time and space. You just saw this something very ancient moving through him. And when I moved on and I moved to Australia, I moved here because of an arranged marriage, which really didn't go very well at all. But then I was here in this country that I just hadn't even thought that I wanted to be here. But it's a beautiful land. And again, there's something about the land in Australia that is very, very ancient. There's an ancient culture here. The Australian Indigenous culture is very ancient. So when I started my dancing here, I really began to question about what is this dance for? Because in India, in a certain way, you assume a lot of things. There's a lot of things that's implicit. But dancing as an Indian dancer in what is now a Western country, I began to question what is the nature of this dance? Why am I doing it? And for me, dance was always a spiritual quest. But it really became a question about what is it that makes this dance spiritual? Is it just the story? Is it just the movement? And I really began to strip away a lot of things. I began to strip away the narratives. I began to strip away the costume, the element of performance. So it's been this this journey. And then I did a lot of other dance styles like contemporary dance and Buto and other things to actually, for me, all of this was a way of finding out more about my own practice. What does it tell me about the way in which the body is used in my own practice? And then I moved to the Netherlands, where I was also working as a professional dancer. By this time, I was doing a lot of contemporary work. I went back to India in about 2006 to start a dance center there. And that was a turning point where I began to offer dance to women without the performance component, without the mastery component, and really as a way for women to explore their sensations, explore their bodies, explore the feminine in the broadest possible sense. And then I actually took a long break from dance after that. I came back to Australia, I took a long break because I felt like I was pushing the boundaries of dance as a philosophical inquiry or a spiritual inquiry. I felt like I'd reached the limits of what was possible in the way that I knew dance. So I took about 8 years away from dance, where I was really studying Indian philosophy in the traditional way, from traditional masters. So not in an academic sense, but as a lived inquiry, as how does a life of action, a life of being in the world, become a spiritual inquiry. And I was bringing up two children on my own as a single mother. So all of this, and I did a lot of other work. I was working for running nonprofit organizations. So it was a very different way of living in the world, not as an artist, but what I call living in the real world, working, meeting real people. And that was an invaluable experience. So when I came back to dance some years ago, I had a very different sensation of what dance is, a very different kind of practice that I offer now, where I feel like I've actually got to the basis of how is dance a body-led spiritual or philosophical inquiry, and what does it mean what does it mean that movement becomes reality, as you said. How is dance reality? How is dance a lens on reality? And what does it offer, the richness that it offers when you consider life as dance, a multidimensional movement that is alive in every moment of our lives. So this is the practice that I offer now through
Mm.
moving archetypes.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love how you're blending so many different modalities and ancient wisdom and archetypes. It's just so multidimensional. And I'll tell you why this topic is so near and dear to my heart. It's because I really truly believe that each one of us is a creative force for the universe. And we are just an infinite wellspring of creativity. And sometimes it just is a matter of activating that creativity. And I feel as though dance is such a powerful activator. And not only that, in your story, it seemed to be such a profound tool of healing as well. And moving through, because I think sometimes when we're going through something, mentioned moving through uncoupling is like the idea that when we're going through something challenging, there can be a tendency to almost constrict and to hold the body tight. And dance allows us to be free and to open and to move. And so I just love that idea of movement for so many different reasons.
Beautifully put, Emily. Dance was always the power and the energy in my life through my most difficult times. And I sometimes hesitate to use the word healing, because sometimes that can have a certain instrumentality, because when we come into something, the beginning of dance is that freedom from the known, as J. Krishnamurti, the philosopher, so beautifully puts it. The beginning of any inquiry, a philosophical inquiry or a spiritual inquiry, is to be prepared or intend to be free of the known. And what it does, even in the most difficult times, what it does is that at least for me, what it has always done, and what I see in the women that I work with and dance with, is that it presents to you the infinite possibilities of reality. Because even when we come in with a sense that I want to solve something or I want to heal something, we are still in very finite possibilities, because our mind has already got an idea of what does that feel like, what does that look like, what does it look like to solve something. But where dance has really held that space of richness is that it's always about this multidimensional, infinite possibilities. So, in the midst of the most difficult moments, dance has always reminded me that everything is connected to everything else, that I can grieve, but in the very same dimension, in the very same constellation, there is the connection to other things. There is the connection to the beauty of nature, of my feelings. There is a beauty in grief. There's a beauty of nature. So there's all these other things that become alive, and it's very difficult to say it in words, because when we speak, something like enjoyment or beauty is the opposite of grief and sorrow. And yet when you move, these sensations are, there's a flow between all these sensations. And that's that beautiful multidimensionality. It's certainly not escapism, because there is a ferocity that is required in this practice that keeps you in your passion, it keeps you in presence. So ferocity is really an important component of this practice. And yet at the same time, it's really important also to say that when you are psychologically fragmented, then there is an important place for therapy. And in my life, I have sought therapy, I've sought counseling, and that's a very different thing. But a philosophical and spiritual inquiry is something that asks a certain passion, energy, and ferocity of us. And so it does require a threshold level of feeling like you can actually engage in this inquiry. And this is an inquiry that, as I said, it does ask a certain ferocity and energy from us. And so there are times in our life when maybe that is not possible. And there are times when it is possible, even in the middle of really difficult moments, to actually hold this inquiry as well.
Yes, that's such a great point. It really is. And I want to get into ferocity because it's not, it's not something that we typically embrace. And yet there's so much beauty in both the pleasure and the ferocity, which I believe goddess wisdom really helps to teach us. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yes, Emily, ferocity is something that we have completely rinsed out of spirituality and philosophical inquiries. The minute you say philosophical inquiry, it's immediately becomes something that's intellectual and analytical. And when you say spirituality, it's like you can't have any intellect, you can't have any rigor, you can't have anything in that domain. And there is a sense where you have to be accepting, forgiving. And yes, all of these things are important, but sometimes I feel that what it brings is a certain passivity. It's like things happen to us and not that we have any investment to make of presence. And even when we talk about presence, the presence becomes something that's very limp and um, neutral, and especially because we've had centuries of spiritual traditions that have asked us to withdraw from emotions, withdraw from the body, that emotion is bad and that our senses are bad and we've got to shut our eyes and not listen to anything and withdraw. And all of this, I feel like it takes away from the capacity of our bodies to really be ferocious. And the most ancient goddesses were always ferocious goddesses. They were war goddesses. And it's not because they were espousing violence or war, but that went to the ferocity of presence, that you need that passion and ferocity to bring presence into life and into practice. And the presence is always drenched in passion and feeling, feeling grief, feeling enjoyment and pleasure, feeling the beauty, seeing the beauty around us, and listening to the bird song and being moved by it. It's so intimate and so simple. And this ferocity is really the foundation of presence. I feel like you can't really say, I'm in the moment and I'm present without that passion and ferocity.
Mm. Yes, that's powerful. That is powerful. And it's such a vibrant and rich way of embodying. And so, as you're speaking, it's almost like I'm feeling and sensing this elemental wisdom of just really getting in touch with all of those sensations and qualities, whether it's, the element of fire for me evokes the feeling of ferocity, and sometimes culturally it's like the dimming of that fire element, and I feel like getting into our bodies, we're able to connect with all of that divine wisdom. And I know for me personally, like, even my journey with movement has evolved so much. It really was around, kind of like more of this masculine energy of like movement and exercise and running a certain distance, and just awakening to the fact that I can move my body in so many different ways. And I just recently took an aerial yoga class for the first time, which was so fun and so creative. Just moving your body in a different way can, open up so many possibilities.
Yes, and movement is in ancient goddess traditions. Movement is the essence of consciousness, is the essence of reality. Pulsation, as they say, spanda or pulsation, is that essence. So we have somehow begun to assume that stillness is all important, that this stillness is somehow the essence of the divine. And I'm saying I'm not rejecting all of that, but here is this invitation that if you look around you, everything moves all the time. This pulsation is there in the breeze, in the leaves, in the trees, in birds, in the clouds. You can see that, and we move all the time. When we breathe, that's our pulsation. The pulse in our bodies is the pulsation. So that movement, which is inherent to the body, and so this is not, in a sense, self-expression, but what happens in the tradition that I do, for example, is that there is the movement, the nature of the dance is a constellation. So it's a multidimensional movement. Each movement is called a karana, and a karana is a multidimensional movement. So there is sensation there, and the way in which the movement is invoked in the body is that there are many different things happening. So it's very difficult for the mind to control it and to, unless it's simplifying it. And this is what happens sometimes, that these things are simplified and they're made into virtuosic expressions, which is absolutely beautiful. And, I never judge anything, because in the goddess tradition, it's plurality. So everything is wonderful. Any dance is better than no dance. So everything is wonderful. But this particular, where dance becomes this kind of inquiry, there is this invitation to hold the multidimensionality without mastery, without technical excellence, without this accumulative habit we have of always getting better at something and being more competent. The word more is not here at all. So you encounter this movement. Every time you encounter it, it's new. It's like a birthing process. You come to it every time anew and refreshed, and it's alive again. And so there's within the practice is all of this invitation to being present in the moment, and to the creativity here is this co-creation. So it is what is the encounter with this movement that's multidimensional, that holds things in it, that holds sensations in it, which is not named. So there is no information about what is the sensation of each karana. We're just told that it holds a sensation. And we allow that unfolding free of labels and words. We don't come into it thinking, oh, this karana holds joy, or that karana holds ferocity. But we come into it and allow the karana to reveal itself, whatever it is in that encounter, because into that encounter, we bring our own bodies, our consciousness, where we are at that time, the consciousness of the macrocosm, what's going on around us. So it's never the same in each moment. The intelligence and the wisdom and the teaching of these movements are never the same. And so all of these things that we speak about, like being present and like being alive in each moment, it actually becomes a material reality and not just a thought. Because sometimes I feel like when we think ourselves into something, it's always in the realm of thought, or we are imposing a thought on our bodies. But here we are allowing the bodies to lead and
Mm.
connect with that pulsation of reality and reveal to us what, the teaching and intelligence of the body.
Yes, yes. I think this is so important because really, when you think about any act of creativity, whether it's dancing or whether it's, having a podcast or whether it's writing a book, it's like there is that element of vulnerability, of, expressing yourself in a new way, in an authentic way. And, I feel like when we take the element of performance out of it, it becomes so much of a richer experience, and we can let go of, and we have things like social media, and we have these constructs that have been created as a collective, and to be able to put that aside and really focus on the act of creating whatever that is, whatever it is that brings you joy, can be such a profound act of love and nurturing.
Yes, beautifully put, because I feel creativity in our times is such an undervalued act, such an undervalued movement, especially in the recent times where we actually designated all creative practices across the world, they became non-essential. And to me, that was an amazing revelation. I suppose we've been moving in that direction anyway. And I thought, here we are. We're finally actually saying that these things that are so, what makes us not just human, but what makes us divine, what makes us living beings, because the creative act is everywhere around us. Every single form in nature creates. And here we are as humans, supposedly we call ourselves the most intelligent life form, and we've designated something like this as non-essential. And so that was a real revelation for me. And this movement, the divinity of creativity, I think something that we've forgotten because we're so, as you say, with social media and with so much pressure on this branding of the I and the branding of the me, we have forgotten that creativity is a divine movement. It's a co-creative movement, that there is that dimension, which is not just about self-expression, not just about that assertion of the self or the selling of the self, but there is a way in which creativity in its most primeval form is what connects us to how the divine is material. And in dance, in this dance practice, you can really feel it in the body, the way that the body connects to the earth through weight, through the way in which we use the weight in our bodies, by which I mean the way, the whether the body is using lightweight or heavy weight, and how that weight connects to the earth. For example, there is a practice in dance called Chatushpada, which means four-footed. And the invitation is, how does, through movement, you connect with the um, four-footed experience of living beings. And it's not imitating the animals, but there is something about the way in which these movements have been revealed, because the dance was a revealed tradition. It wasn't, it's not a mind-created tradition. And that's really evident when you do the practice, that it's not really something of the mind. And, and this intelligence, this four-footed intelligence, is really important, because there is a way in which it materially brings you into how the attachment to gravity and the momentum that that provides really makes you feel like I can actually, there is a balancing of effort in your body and the way in which the earth meets that, that creates this co-creative movement and experience that is so visceral. It's not a thought, it's not a word, it's an actual experience of the body, this co-creation. And, and for me, that's so important because it actually makes that a reality. This is when you move your body, you can feel the difference between a body that is moved out of that effort, that individual will and effort, and a body that moves because it is helped by the earth, and there is this meeting of the energy of the earth and our energy, and then a momentum is set up, and there is this invitation of being taken. That being taken is not passive, but there is an energy and ferocity we have to have in our bodies to where that happens. It's like this clicking, that connection that happens, and this beautiful moment where you feel like you're like the lion that's running across the earth, and these animals are so efficient in the way in which they use their bodies, and you can just feel how your body clicks into that efficiency and that being takenness by the earth. And so this co-creation is again a fundamental principle of nature and reality. And when we say we are the Anthropocene and we pull ourselves out of that co-creative movement, that co-creative pulsation, it's a dangerous thing, and it's a destructive thing, and mostly for ourselves. And it's dangerous and destructive, not just about the planet and humanity, but I feel like it's a destructive thing even at an intimate level for us.
Yes, yes, that's so true. And as you're so beautifully sharing, it's like I'm seeing and hearing all of these metaphors that relate to dance. And dance, I feel like, can be such a powerful metaphor for life. We can dance with life in a different way. We can move our bodies in a different way. And there is a way that we even sit, that can be more pleasurable and more honoring of our bodies. So I'd love to talk about this idea of just making life more of a dance and bringing more pleasure into our daily lives, and maybe some practical ways that we can start to do this on a daily basis.
Um, for me, Emily, life is dance is more than a metaphor. I say reality is dance. And when we look at the most ancient invocation of dance in India, which is Shiva, the dancing Shiva, which I'm sure many of your listeners will know about, the figure of Nataraja, or the dancing Shiva. And it's not a metaphor. It's actually saying that this is reality. And that's what Shiva says. This is reality. The cosmos in the body, the sun and the moon, the fire, all the elements in the body. And dance, when Shiva is standing on this little dwarf-like figure, which represents the mental consciousness, the mind-led dominion, which is necessary, but it is the body-led movement, a reality that is movement, that is more expansive and far greater than the mind-led consciousness. And when we lead from the body, the mind actually finds its rightful place. So we're not saying the mind is the villain or it's wrong. And the ways in which I invite women to practice this in their daily lives, a very simple thing is, even when you sit, just grounding through the feet, placing the feet in the floor and just pressing the feet, feeling our weight and our energy through the feet, connecting to the earth, and also feeling how the earth rises to meet us. So not feeling like the ground is inert. It doesn't matter where we are, because everything is made of the earth. So even when you're in your home, just feeling how when you press into the earth rises to meet that energy. And sometimes even when we are sitting, that's just a simple way of connecting to that, to the gravity, to the attraction. When we speak of attachment to earth, again, this is a visceral attachment. It's through our weight, we are connected to our gravity, to the earth. Another simple thing is listening to birdsong. It's so simple. But when you listen, my invitation is don't worry about which bird. Don't go and look up on Google what's the bird and what's all the information about the bird, but just listen to it. And without even looking where the bird is, but just listening to bird song. Sometimes I go for days without listening to any sound. I make a really a commitment to just being attending to bird song, and it really shifts something about your bodily experience.
Mm-hmm.
Bird song is so important. It's so important. There is a reason why birds sing, and there is an invitation from the birds to actually enjoy them. They're
Mm-hmm.
calling for us to enjoy them. Yeah. And another thing, which if it's possible, is when you go outside, just lie on the earth, and not limply. This is a very ancient practice, and it's there in many cultures, like women lying on the earth. It's there in many cultures.
Oh yeah.
So just lying down, but pressing your body down, just pressing yourself down in as if you are the soil, just like the soil that's kind of pressed down into the earth, just pressing down, the chin, not dropping the head back, but the chin tucked in, hands open to the sky, and just without closing the eyes, just be open. Look at the sky, look at the clouds moving. It's an incredible experience because in ancient times, this is how earth is. It's like we become the earth when we lie down and we see what the earth sees. We see what she sees. She sees, the branches, the birds flying, the clouds. It's like you feel like the sky is pouring into you, which is
Mm.
all the stories we have about the earth and the, making love to the sky, that unity of earth and sky. You can really, it becomes this, again, more than words, it becomes this beautiful visceral experience. So really simple things. And I also share simple practices on my channels on Facebook and YouTube. And there are simple things that you can do every day. It's very simple. You can go to a corner of your office and do it, or in your homes. You don't have to wake up every morning at 5 a.m. to do this. You can do it when you feel like it.
Yes, it's throughout the day, just getting outside, laying on the earth. I mean, such simple practices, but also so intentional and having the ability to really slow us down, connect us with our nervous system, connect us with our senses. I feel like for me, pleasure is experienced in such a multi-sensory, multi-dimensional way. And to really whether it's like just putting some flowers on my desk so that I can see them, or smelling essential oils, or taking a walk in nature. It really is taking the time to connect through the senses and in so many different ways. And then the other part of that too is really allowing our emotional experience to be fully present and honoring everything that arises, whether it is, the ferocity, whether it is more of, anger or um, sadness or passion, whatever those emotions are, to be present and to be fully there with whatever is arising.
Emily, I love the word that you use, multisensorial. That's a word that I use a lot of the time too, because our body is a multisensorial domain. It's a multisensorial moving um, site, and that multisensoriality is also what reality is like. Reality is sensual, and as another simple thing that I invite women to do is to be really present to scent. Because sometimes when we are so caught up in the mind, you'll see that we actually don't smell anything. And in the goddess tradition, the lowest chakra, the Muladhara, the attribute of that chakra is scent,
Mm.
and scent is always associated. So we it is said that you scent the goddess because she's so elusive and subtle that you don't go looking for her in an objective, you don't make her into an object, but you scent her. It's like she's infused in your body. And a little thing that you can do is also just smelling your own skin, your own body, your own hair, your own skin, because we are so remote from our own bodies and the beauty and the enjoyment of our own bodies. So sometimes when women start, when we start our classes, the first thing I say is, do you can you scent? Can
Mm,
you smell your own skin? Just bring your hands and just smell your own skin. And so that's a beautiful way of enlivening our senses. And yes, being non-judgmental about feeling. Nothing is good or bad. It's just like feelings and sensations are primeval. It's like a thunderstorm. It can be frightening, it can be violent, and it can be frightening, but it's not good or bad. And there is a certain kind of beauty and in its movement. There's something that can fill us with wonder, and that is something we've lost too. We've lost the capacity to wonder, to be awestruck
mm,
by our own feelings, by our own sensations, by our senses. We're just not awestruck at beauty, like you say, the beauty of the flowers on our desk, the beauty of a flower in the garden. Just that sense of wonder is so important for us to feel that, when we speak of connection to nature, and this is something that's really important in the work that I do, is how do we bring that visceral connection back to nature? And I think the reason why that despite so much of talking about reconnecting to nature, that we really don't find our way back is because that connection is a multisensorial one. It's
mhm.
like we've got to reconnect to our body itself as nature, as that multisensorial expression of nature. And that's the first connection. Nature begins in our bodies. And it's when we are really able to live in that multidimensional, multisensorial body, we are already then living in that multidimensional nature. It will automatically reconnect us back to nature.
Yes, I love that. And I want to add too, I feel it's important that these practices really are for all genders, and it's something that, we can all connect to, this energy of pleasure and play and bringing that in and connecting with our physical temples. And, I think that the really exciting thing about creativity is that when we're allowing ourselves to create for the sheer joy of creating, that can be translated into so many different forms, whether it's dance, whether it's art, whether it's, looking at whether you're doing what you're doing in a business as creative play, as creative expression. It's really changing the paradigm, I feel like, around what is creativity, what is play.
Yes, absolutely, and yes, it's very inclusive. I offer this to women because that's where I feel like my experience and my what I know about life and body and experience is best served. Um, at the same time, the ancient traditions did honor woman in a particular way. There was an honoring of women as the facilitators, as the custodians, the woman's body as a way of the way in which that divine expression is manifest. But that was never to say that it doesn't mean that no one else is invited or part of the practice. In fact, the interesting thing is, even though we say women led, goddess led, um, it's the way of expressing it through our language, which is words are always duality. Somebody's leading, somebody's following. But in the tradition, there is no hierarchy. So when we are body led or goddess led, there is no hierarchy. It's not that the goddess is more important than the divine masculine, but so it's this paradoxical experience, which is very difficult to put into words because words are always hierarchical. So
Mhm.
yes, thank you for bringing that. And in terms of the creativity, yes, but what I invite people is, where is that creativity coming from? Is it a mind-led paradigm? Are we imposing what we already know? Are we imposing, as you say, are we imposing ideas about what is creative uh, on that expression? Or is there a space of revelation? How do we recognize revelation? How do we manifest revelation? And how do we bring revelation into form? And this is where I feel that movement or dance has a slightly different space, because the body is the most intimate site. We can't get more intimate than the body. And dance is that movement of that body. And in ancient times, dance was considered a foundational practice. So from dance came everything else. In fact, in the Natya Shastra, the text that underpins, it's about 4,000 years old, and of course dance is older than that. But in the text, it says that dance doesn't require anything else. It doesn't require music. It doesn't require text. It doesn't require narrative. It is something of itself. And that is that invitation that from dance can come other expressions. So we have a body-led way of being creative, whether as a visual artist or as a poet or in business. But there is a way that reconnecting back to that body-led intelligence and consciousness manifests in every other expression of life. And I know that I work with women who are artists, who are visual artists, or who are writers, and they all say the same thing, that once they awaken or recognize that intelligence, that body, what is that body-led intelligence, particularly how revelation becomes a material experience. So revelation is not it can never be a thought, because it is something that is off each moment. And so a thought is always something that you can capture and then, it's there. But a revelation is always elusive to word, but it's a visceral embodied experience. And when you experience that revelation, when you experience reality itself, life itself as an unfolding revelation, which is the ancient meaning of the Sanskrit word sat, or truth, which is an unfolding movement of reality. That was the meaning of truth. So when you can experience that, everything changes. The way you speak changes, what you write, what you create, everything changes. And I think that's where in many ancient cultures, not just in India, dance had a really primeval role in this ritual consciousness.
Powerful, Padma. This is so beautiful. I mean, just as you're sharing, it's just, I invite listeners to kind of reflect on anything that you do on maybe a repetitive basis. Anything that feels just kind of routine, the way you move, the way you go through your day, and I feel like you are inviting us to bring a curiosity. That's such a beautiful thing about the body, is that we can move in different and unique ways. So to, challenge ourselves or to invite ourselves to experience dance or experience movement is to experience the way that we can move with life, with any type of co-creative process in a new way as well.
Yeah, and play is so important. That's another thing, like wonder. I mean, all these go together. I think if you have play, then you'll have wonder. And so, yeah, we're not playful anymore. I think I was reading this wonderful German philosopher, Byung-Chul Han, and he talks about how we've lost the play, the theatricality of life, where everything, there was a kind of ritual play in, for example, in India, the way when you meet elders, you do certain things, you touch their feet, and there is a particular language that you use. And we know that in the Western world, there was this theatricality about social interaction at one time. And today we've kind of discarded all that, which we think it's not important, it's a waste of time. But we've lost something about reality itself when we are not in play. And play isn't to be childish, because play goes hand in hand with ferocity. You need to be ferocious to be playful in reality. And so many of these goddesses were playful and ferocious in the same moment. And here's where that multidimensionality of dance helps. How do you hold ferocity and play in the same moment? And so that being ferociously playful, uh, being curious, being filled with wonder in life, and that's when life becomes a revelation. Because otherwise, we are just, as you say, we're just repeating. When we say history repeats itself, that's because we are repeating history. It's not that that's the truth, that history has to repeat itself. And I feel like that's what we've been doing for centuries. We've been repeating philosophies, we've been repeating certain ways in which we think that we have to be spiritual. And look where we are now. And I feel like, if not now, when are we going to say, hey, we need some other ways uh, of recognizing truth? And we because the ways that we've been holding for centuries have really not brought us to a good place. And I think this is the time to allow some of these co-creative, simple traditions of beauty, enjoyment, pleasure, all of the things that we rejected. And most importantly, how do we honor the body? Because I feel like over centuries, the biggest movement across all cultures in the world has been this rejection of the body. We've talked about transcending body, leaving the body. Everything that's valuable is out of the body. We speak of out of the body, transcend body. We speak of ascension, but it's really about descending back to earth, descending back into our body, um, honoring the body, because the body, like I said, the body is the earth. And honoring the earth starts with honoring the body.
I love that so much. If somebody is listening and they feel a little bit disconnected from their body and they'd like to embark upon a journey of deepening that connection, deepening that sense of embodiment, what are some, maybe practical ways that you would recommend getting started?
So this is interesting. I just had one of the women in my group classes yesterday ask me exactly this question about what can you do in little ways. And one of the things I say, little things like when you get up in the morning, uh, just be attentive to how much do you attend to your body. We get up, we have this shower, we rush out, we put some clothes on, and we're out of the house. And in all of that time, what have we done to honor the body? Is there something we can do, even if it's in the shower, just enjoying the warm water on our skin? Sometimes the women I practice with do their dance movements in the shower. And this is really beautiful, because especially for women, those of us who have families and responsibilities, it's very difficult to find time, that private and intimate time, to really go into your body. And the shower is a great space to do a little bit of movement, as long as you can do it safely. But doing a little bit of movement with that beautiful water flowing on down your skin is a even if it's a couple of minutes in the shower, just to honor that sensorial experience of water. Just putting something being aware of the scent, the scent of your body, enjoying something that you adorn your body with, whether it's the scent or whether it's a beautiful piece of jewelry, but just doing it with beauty, with a sense of enjoyment of the body. During the day, like I said, at times just coming back into the scent. When you're sitting in front of your computer and there's so much mechanical living in the times we live in, there's so much of this mechanical routine that happen, but just taking a little bit of time to smell, just becoming aware of what are the, without worrying about naming the scent, but just coming into that sensation of, can I smell? So not mechanical breathing, because we've made breath mechanical as well. We talk about counting and doing this, and so we make even that breathing mechanical. But if we can enliven the breath by bringing, what is the breath there for? To help us scent things. What do we scent? Can we smell our own bodies? Can we smell our own hair? Sometimes a little thing, just taking a couple of minutes to just is there a bird song somewhere nearby? Is there anything, any sound of an insect or bird song that you can connect with? So simple things like this to just honor the body, or even finding 5 minutes to put a bit of beautiful oil and massage yourself. Even if it's sometimes, if you don't get time to do the whole body, because then it becomes this, our mind has a way of making everything into an event, and it becomes like, oh my God, I don't have time to put an oil massage on my whole body, or I don't have time to go and get a massage. But you can just take a little bit of oil. Sometimes it's just sitting when you're watching TV or something, just your hands or your feet, putting some oil on your feet. I do that sometimes, even on a busy day. I just spend a bit of time in the evening. I might be watching something, and I just put some oil on my feet, on the lower part of my legs. It's just almost like you're saying thank you to the body for putting up with everything that we inflict on the body during our lifetimes, during the day. And because I dance, I love it when I can just say thank you to my feet for bearing my weight, and for the dancing that I do. And these are just little simple things to honor the body, because when we honor the body, we also honor ourselves. We live and die in this body.
Such helpful, practical, simple, beautiful acts of self-love that we can really integrate on a daily basis. Thank you so much for sharing. And I'd love to ask you, just how might listeners be able to go deeper with you, learn more about your work, and what are some of the ways that clients work with you?
So I offer, everything I do is online, and I offer group classes, and we have 4 different courses in the year. So right now I'm doing a course on Kshetra, which is the sacred body, the invocation of the sacred body. And the courses are mainly geared to Australian times. However, I do have people from different parts of the world, if they can make it, they're live online sessions. But there are sometimes I do have women from different parts of the world. If they can make the timings, they're very welcome to join in those courses. I also offer an individual program, which is open internationally, because that we work individually, so we can work around the convenience of people in different parts of the world. And again, in that program, I do have women from different parts of the world. That's a 6-month program where I accompany you in the cave of the goddess invocation. You choose a goddess that is calling to you, because I feel like the goddess is called to you, and we invoke that goddess together. So I accompany you in that invocation. And that for me is like the heart of the practice. The heart of the practice is that intimate, accompanied practice. That is how traditionally these practices were done in India always, including whether it was yoga or dance or anything. It was that one-on-one accompanied invocation. So that's called reclaiming your sacred self. I also offer weekly practices on my channels on Facebook and YouTube, where women can, if they just want to have a taste of it or dip their toes, that is a really great way to start. I also offer philosophical information and insights on my Facebook page and on my blog, on my website. So many ways that women can connect with me, and I love it if you feel called in whatever way. I like to provide different ways in which women can connect and bring it into their lives.
Beautiful. Yes, so many exciting ways. Padma, this has been one of my favorite conversations. It's such an honor co-creating with you today, and so much important wisdom that you shared. I just want to thank you and honor you, and just express my gratitude for you for showing up and sharing your light with our listeners.
And Emily, I want to say that this is one of my favorite conversations too. It's not very easy to speak about dance, and it's wonderful to have you with that. You bring that intuitive feeling and knowing about dance, and that's just a wonderful gift. And I love, as I said, I love the space you hold, and indeed it was a co-creative space. And so thank you so much for the honor of sharing this with you.
Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. And to everybody listening, thank you for being here. So much love and gratitude to you. If this conversation spoke to you, please share it with a friend or somebody that would benefit from hearing this wisdom. And as always, sending you so, so much love and gratitude.